Who was King Solomon really? Many people know that this historical character, who is often shown as smart and respected, has more to his story than meets the eye. With its honest and thorough story, the Bible doesn't hide the bad sides of the great names of faith. Solomon, who is remembered with love in many speeches and teachings, shows both kindness and the flaws of people. Imagine a king who loves God so much that he is willing to give up 1,000 burnt gifts as a sacrifice. In the first book of Kings, that same king, who was looking for knowledge, makes a special request to God. This request is marked by intelligence that led to a time of peace. Solomon climbs up to the altar in Gibeon, a very holy place, to make his offerings. This is an act of devotion and part of his purpose. On a mysterious night, he had a dream in which he saw a holy vision. The Lord said, "Ask for anything you want, and it will be given to you." Solomon, who was surprisingly humble, didn't ask for money or power. Instead, he asked for wisdom, saying, "I am only a little child and do not know how to go out before your people." He did this by asking for a heart that would be wise and understanding, able to tell the difference between good and evil. But how real was Solomon's humility? How could a king with so much wisdom make such a stupid mistake? These questions make us think more deeply about Solomon's two sides. He was a leader who tried to do the right thing by following his father David's example, but he was also a person with flaws, just like the rest of us. As we learn more about this king's life, we see that it is a kind of human depth. Every choice Solomon made, every act of faith he did, and every mistake he made teach us about the ongoing battle between right and wrong, between the holy and the everyday. By looking at these differences, we not only learn more about Solomon, but we also think about our own flaws and problems. So, the story of Solomon isn't just a story from an old book. It's also a call to think about ourselves and keep learning about how people can try to be wise while still making mistakes. With this vision, maybe we can also strive for the same kind of wisdom that helped Solomon run his country with hope and respect. Before we continue with this amazing story, if you liked it and want to learn more about Solomon's life, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and make sure you turn on alerts so you don't miss our next videos that will teach you something. Come with me as we learn how choices and knowledge can affect our lives. As always, if you want to help this project, please leave a super thanks. We can keep telling more Bible stories and spreading this message of faith and hope thanks to your gift. Thank you so much for your help. Moving on. The Lord was pleased to hear Solomon's humble request and replied in a way that would shape the future of his kingdom. "Because you chose wisdom over riches or the death of your enemies, I will give you not only a deep understanding, but also riches and honors that no one before you or after you will ever match," God said. This act of kindness from God not only made Solomon who he was as a leader, it also set a bar for how he should act in the future. God put a condition on it. "One of the benefits you will get is living a long life if you follow my rules like your father David did." This conversation with the gods not only made Solomon more famous, but it also solidified his position as a respected and feared king whose knowledge went beyond what most people could understand. Solomon was a wise king, and he also wrote important books that are now part of religious thought and writing. He wrote important books like Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs, and Proverbs, in which he shared deep thoughts about faith, life, and how people should act. His words were so powerful that they were passed down from generation to generation, changing the way people thought and felt spiritually. Solomon wrote in Proverbs about how important it is to be wise and know what is right. "Listen to my words, my son, so that you can always speak wisely and know what you're talking about." These words, which are spoken in chapter 5, lines 1 and 2, are like a call to think about and be careful about how you live your life. It is said that fearing the Lord is the start of knowledge, and that knowing the Holy One is the same thing as understanding. This is another powerful saying by Solomon. This theory says that real understanding doesn't just come from knowing a lot of things, it also comes from having a lot of respect for the divine. In Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1, Solomon's thoughts on time and eternity are written down in stone. Every action has its right time, and there is a time for everything under heaven. This thought about how life goes in cycles and how its stages are inevitable gives us comfort and reminds us that every moment has value and meaning that come from divine knowledge. Solomon's gifts to biblical wisdom were not just academic, they were essential to understanding how complicated people are when it comes to the holy and the everyday. Because he could combine faith with everyday life, his writings have always been a source of wisdom, inspiration, and direction. This means that when we think about Solomon's impact, we should think about both how much he knew and how much he believed. He showed that a leader can reach great heights of respect and influence by seeking knowledge with a pure heart and living a life of service to God. His influence and respect have reached and changed hearts and minds throughout the ages. Solomon's words show again the idea of time, which is so important to his works and thoughts. From heaven to earth, there is a time for everything and everyone. This saying from the book of Ecclesiastes has been around for a long time and shows that every part of life is carefully planned by God. Solomon realized while he was thinking that even though people were limited, God gave them a sense of infinity, even though they could not fully understand the scope of God's works. Solomon was very smart and wise, just like God. He not only made his people admire him, but also strong people from far away were interested in him. The Queen of Sheba was one of these people. She was interested in the king's fame, so she made the long trip to Jerusalem. Reports of wisdom so deep that it went beyond what most people understood, and wealth that could compete with the richest kingdoms at the time drove her to go on this trip. When the Queen of Sheba got there, she was followed by a huge caravan with camels carrying spices, heavy gold, and valuable stones. This show of wealth and exoticism was not only a sign of how important she was, but it also showed respect and excitement for her meeting with Solomon. The Queen and Solomon had deep conversations in which she tested his intelligence and his ability to lead with knowledge by giving him riddles and tough questions. The Queen asked him. Solomon, whose knowledge came from God, not only answered all of her questions without doubt, but he did so in a way that was even better than she had hoped. When the Queen of Sheba saw Solomon's wisdom, the beauty of his house, the quality and quantity of his food, and the order and respectability of his workers and officials, she was deeply pleased and showed it. Before I saw it for myself, I didn't believe the stories. I was told that these were better than what I had imagined, she told the king. Her words not only confirmed how great she thought Solomon was, but they also showed how well his knowledge, faith, and government all worked together. The Queen of Sheba's visit was more than just a political event. It proved that Solomon was a great leader whose fame and skills reached across national and cultural lines. This meeting is a symbol of where different cultures and faiths meet, with a shared appreciation for knowledge and guidance that comes from God. When we think about this story, it reminds us that wisdom has the power to not only make laws that are fair, but also to inspire and bring people together from different places. Because of this, Solomon's impact goes beyond the borders of Israel. He taught many people about respect, communication, and the never-ending search for truth and understanding. The fact that Solomon's wealth and understanding surprised the Queen of Sheba shows us a valuable lesson about what we expect and what we actually get. Many people doubt someone's traits based on stories, but knowing them for real can turn that doubt into admiration and respect. This change in how people saw things was clear when the Queen said that even though she had heard about Solomon's greatness, what she saw topped her expectations. The Queen of Sheba's visit not only solidified Solomon's image as a smart and wealthy king, but it also showed that his fame had spread beyond the borders of Israel. This meeting between two major powers at the time showed how powerful Israel was under Solomon's rule. and how respected his knowledge was around the world. According to history and the Bible, this meeting had such a big effect that many other leaders and great men from faraway places wanted to visit Solomon to try to figure out how he knew so much and how to be a good leader. Each visit made Solomon even more famous as a wise man and made Israel's strategic ties with other countries stronger. As this reflection on Solomon's conversation with the Queen of Sheba comes to a close, we are asked to think about how true wisdom never goes out of style, and how the lessons of past leaders can still help us understand each other better and get along better with others. We are still inspired by this event, which is written down in Scripture and passed down through generations. It shows us that knowledge, along with ethics and morals, can lead to great achievements in the past of humanity. After seeing how great Solomon was, the Queen of Sheba spoke words of praise that resounded through the house. "They haven't told me half of what you know, and you have." She talked about how lucky Solomon's people and officials were to be constantly influenced by his great leadership. She praised the Lord for picking Solomon to lead Israel, which she saw as an act of eternal love that would keep justice and righteousness alive. In honor of her welcome and to show her appreciation, the Queen of Sheba gave Solomon 120 talents of gold, as well as an incredible number of spices and valuable stones. Not only was this gift a diplomatic act, it was also a sign of great respect and a way to strengthen a strategic partnership. History books from that time say that so many spices had never been taken to Israel before. This was a big deal for the kingdom's relationships with other countries. The ships that Hiram sent to Ophir already brought gold, but this time they also brought more almug wood and precious stones, which Solomon wisely used. Trees known for being very rare and expensive were used to make supports for the house of the Lord and the royal palace. It was also used to make musical instruments like harps and lyres that made religious and cultural events in the kingdom more enjoyable. These instruments weren't just decorations. They stood for the peace and beauty that Solomon wanted to bring to his rule. The knowledge and wealth that came from his government could be seen in the way music was used in church ceremonies and public events. After trading gifts and information, the Queen of Sheba went back to her own country, but she left her kingdom and Israel stronger. Solomon not only grew his country by conquering new lands, but also by making deals and trading with other countries. The diplomacy she used during her visit showed this. Solomon's wealth did not come from these political meetings alone, though. The Holy Book says that he got 666 tons of gold every year, on top of the money he made from dealing with merchants and traders and the taxes that kings and leaders of nearby lands paid him. His wealth not only let him keep up a great army and court, but it also paid for big projects like making big hammered gold shields, each with 600 gold cycles, to protect the throne and show royal power. In addition to being useful, these shields showed how important and safe Solomon's cash and knowledge were to the country. Each piece showed how beautiful his rule was and how strong his foreign and internal policies were. This added to his image as a wise and strong king. Not only did Solomon's people have a lot of money, but they also had a lot of culture and spiritual wealth. He had a deep understanding of what it means to be a leader because of how he ran his country, giving equal value to financial, human, and spiritual resources. Solomon's actions of knowledge, fairness, and communication not only made his own people better, but they also left a legacy that people will remember and respect for many years to come. Solomon's famed wealth and wisdom didn't come without problems. During his rule, there were many shades of difficulty and conflict. He kept 300 small hammered gold shields and a beautiful ivory throne covered in gold in the palace of the Forest of Lebanon as signs of his power and wealth. However, there were also parts of his personal life that were very different from the image of a fair and wise king. His family, which was made up of 700 wives and 300 concubines, shows a pattern from that time that we find strange and criticized today. There were Moabites, Ammonites, Sidonians, and Hittites among these women. They were from countries that God told the Israelites they couldn't marry from. There was a clear reason for this rule. It was possible for these kinds of marriages to turn the kings and the Israelites away from the Lord's ways and toward other gods. Solomon must have known these threats very well, because they came true in his own life. The love he felt for these foreign women not only led his heart wrong, but it also hurt him spiritually. It was so strong that Solomon started to worship the gods that these wives did, like Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Moloch, the scary god of the Ammonites. This betrayal was not a one-time thing. It was horrible that he built high places for these horrible gods, because his own God thought that was wrong. The hill to the east of Jerusalem was used for paganism. People burned incense and made offerings to gods other than the Lord there. Solomon was supposed to follow the rules, but these acts not only broke those rules, they also made the service at the temple in Jerusalem less pure. When these sins were committed, God had a harsh response. The Lord had come to Solomon twice to show him favor and give him knowledge and safety, but the king's split heart let him down. Solomon had turned away from God, which made God very angry. It used to be that they gave each other gifts and promises, but now they warn and scold each other. This time of spiritual and moral decline during his rule teaches us a very important lesson about people and our duties as leaders. People who don't keep an eye on their character and decisions can easily become corrupted by power and influence. Even though Solomon was very smart, he gave in to the Lord's charms and other outside forces that made him less devoted and loyal. Solomon's journey shows the difference between the good things that happen when you obey God and the bad things that happen when you settle and go against what God says. Even a king who is smarter and wealthier than everyone else can fail and make mistakes that cost them everything. So, these ugly flaws in Solomon's legacy serve as a somber warning that even the great can fail, and that the only way to be truly wise is to keep your heart strong in faith and devotion. Solomon's fall, which was marked by his indulgence and turning away from God's ways, ended with God stepping in and announcing a punishment that would change the direction of Israel's history. Because Solomon had been unfaithful, the Lord was very angry and said that the kingdom would be taken away from him. However, out of love for his father, David, and the holy city of Jerusalem, this terrible event would not happen until his son's rule. David's lineage would rule over only one group longer. This was a sign of kindness in the middle of a harsh punishment. While Solomon was wise and wealthy, his personal life was also full of lust and a terrible lack of control in his relationships, which turned him away from God. This mental separation not only made him less stable, but it also set the stage for the fall of the country he had ruled. In this unstable situation, Jeroboam, a well-known and useful man, became a key figure. Solomon knew he was good at what he was doing and put him in charge of the workforce from the tribe of Joseph. But when Jeroboam met the prophet Ahijah of Shiloh, his life took a very different turn. Jeroboam was leaving Jerusalem when they met, and there was a sign and a prophecy that marked the meeting. He put on a new robe and met Jeroboam in the field, away from people who might be watching. The prophet did something dramatic. He tore his cloak into 12 pieces and told Jeroboam to take 10 of them. It was God's will for this to happen. It was clear that God would take most of the country from Solomon and give it to Jeroboam. He would rule over 10 of the 12 tribes. The cloak splitting showed that the country was about to be split in two. It was a physical representation of a spiritual and political fact that was about to happen. This time was very important because it not only marked the rise of Jeroboam, but it also showed how bad Solomon's actions were. The king, who used to be smart and fair, saw that the mistakes he had made would cause his country to fall apart. In this message, the prophet Ahijah not only told what would happen in the near future, but he also stressed how important it is to follow God's rules and be loyal to him. Power would not be passed easily, and the kingdom would not be split up without some trouble. Ahijah's words set off a chain of events that would test how well the Israelite tribes could work together and figure out who they were. The split between the northern and southern groups, with Jeroboam in charge of the northern part of the new nation of Israel and the south remaining as the kingdom of Judah, showed how the political situation was broken and how divided the people were. In the past of Israel, this event shows how important it is to have leaders who follow God's rules. Solomon's failure to keep his spiritual purity had effects on more than just his own life. They also had effects on people who came after him. When Jeroboam became king of the 10 tribes, it was both the start of a new era in politics and a sobering warning of what happens when people don't follow God's rules. The events that led to the fall of Solomon's kingdom were followed by a message from God that showed kindness and direction. God promised again to keep his promise to the line of David and the city of Jerusalem, even though Solomon had disobeyed. The promise to keep a country run by Solomon's son was a sign of loyalty to David, who was his helper, and an acknowledgement of how holy Jerusalem was as God's choice for the spiritual center of Israel. God made it clear that he would not leave the house of David totally, even though the kingdom would be split up. Instead, he would make sure that a lamp stayed lit in front of him in Jerusalem as a sign that he was still there and that the city and David's children were safe. This promise showed that God wanted to keep a faithful group of people so that the messianic line and the promises made to David would continue to grow. At the same time, Jeroboam was picked to lead the 10 tribes that would break away from Judah's rule. In addition to being a punishment for Solomon, this choice gave Jeroboam a chance to start a new era for Israel. But the condition was clear and matched the rules that God gave to David. In the eyes of the Lord, Jeroboam would have to serve God, do what he says, and be fair. Jeroboam would not only be able to rule, but he would also be able to start a long-lasting line like David's and have God's backing forever. God's promise to Jeroboam was tempting because it meant he could rule in a righteous and good way as long as he followed God's rules. The people of Israel hoped that when he was in charge, the 10 tribes would become more reliable and prosperous again, like in the best years of David's rule. Not only did this change Israel's political landscape, but it also brought about new moral and administrative problems. As the leader of a huge kingdom, Jeroboam had to unite a people who had been split up by recent trouble and set up his rule in a way that followed God's instructions. The success or failure of his dynasty, and by extension, the spiritual and financial well-being of the tribes he led, would depend on how he managed these duties. The things that God told Jeroboam show a basic truth. A kingdom's strength and security don't just come from having a lot of money or a strong army. They also come from following divine rules. By making sure that his actions were in line with God's rules, Jeroboam could leave a legacy that would bring Israel back together and make it stronger. Having a tribe that has always been ruled by David's family also served as a steady reminder of God's promises and kindness. As Israel went through times of punishment and restoration, God stayed true to his promises, giving people in Jerusalem and throughout Israel hope for the future. In this way, Jerusalem remained the spiritual center, and the tribe of Judah continued the lineage of David. Meanwhile, the 10 tribes led by Jeroboam had to start over based on obedience and respect for God, which would shape their history for years to come. We meet a king whose beauty and knowledge have been overwhelmed by the results of his own mistakes as Solomon's story comes to a close. God told David's children and grandchildren to be humble as a warning that power and glory are temporary, and that following God is the only way to be safe and stable. Solomon's attempt to kill Jeroboam shows how desperate a man was to stay in power, even if it meant giving up his values. When Jeroboam ran away to Egypt to be safe with King Sisaki, it was the start of a time of exile that would last until Solomon died. When this event happens, it ends a rough part of Jeroboam's life and a time of trouble for Israel. Wisdom and wealth were promised at the start of Solomon's life, but it finished in strife and disagreement. This is a strong lesson. He was once in charge of all 12 of Israel's tribes, but now only one of them is left. This person is living proof that even the biggest successes can be lost if the bases on which they are built are damaged. The story of Solomon shows us how fragile people are and how important it is to be honest and brave about our flaws. It's a call for all of us to think about how we're living our lives and how we're handling the gifts and duties God has given us. We show our appreciation for the lessons we learned from Solomon in the ending prayer. Lord, thank you for being my loving King. Thank you for the lessons I've learned from Solomon's life and how his rules have helped me live in a way that pleases you. In the name of Jesus, I will finish my journey with honor and purpose for the growth of your name. Yes, there is more to this prayer than just a plea for help. It sounds like what we all want, happiness and success in every part of our lives. The goal is to respect God by living in a way that makes other people want to do the same. Solomon was a great example of this goal in his best times. Solomon's heritage, with all of its flaws, is a light for all of us. It shows us that our decisions and deeds, no matter how high we go, shape the course of history. Solomon's life shows us that we should seek real knowledge and follow God's rules, not for our own benefit, but for the benefit of the one who gave us life. Because of this, thinking about Solomon's life and times makes us realize that we can all change the world around us, so that, like Solomon in his prime, we leave a legacy that lasts for generations. Let us do this with knowledge, honesty, and a heart that is turned toward God. We hope that the story of Solomon has given you ideas and made you think. If this video changed the way you see things, please share it with family and friends who might also learn something from it. Feel free to leave a comment below with your ideas or questions. We look forward to hearing from you and continuing to learn with you. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video so you don't miss the next story that will inspire you and grow your faith. Thank you for following us to the end of this incredible story. See you in the next video. May God be with you always. Amen.